Slide down a little bit, because my microphone's down. Oh, there, yeah, this one. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:02. I will start. Hello, I'm Janet Evans, the Chair of the CA Board of Directors. Please remember that this meeting of the CA Board of Directors is being live streamed. Please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. Please be courteous to each other when you do speak. Please state your name so that everyone knows who is speaking. Speak clearly and slowly so that everyone can hear you. Please use the chat feature to be recognized. I will introduce each item on the agenda, and voting will be by roll call. I will restate a motion before a vote is taken, and I will now call roll. Okay, Sherry?
Here.
Ginny?
Here.
Dick?
Here.
Lynn?
Here.
Tina?
Here.
Jess?
Here.
Alan?
I'm somewhere.
Renee?
Here.
Andy?
Here.
Lakey?
Here.
And Janet here. Okay. All right, so for tonight's meeting, Alan is our timekeeper. You're in luck because we have no residents for resident speak out. So announcement of closed and special meetings to be held. We had 2 closed meetings. The first was June 10th. It was a virtual risk management committee meeting, which is always closed. The committee members present were Lakey Boyd, Susan Krabby, Alan Klein, Jess Duvall, and Tina Horn. And there was no vote taken to close because all of these meetings are closed per the rules of the Risk Management Committee. The second one is the Columbia Association Board of Directors Architectural Resource Committee closed meeting. It was held June 14th. Started at 1, ended at 2:43. ARC members present: Kristen Russell, Deb Bach, Deborah Wilkinson, Susan Sloan, and Ed Gordon. Vote to close was 5 in favor, 0 against. And the reason to close was discussion of new and ongoing covenant cases, HOA Section 11B-1, 11-4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, and other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation.
And Janet, could you just, Alan, please say a word about why it is that the Risk Management Committee meetings are closed per the rules? So we have a statement.
Because it has to do with potential legal issues.
It still requires a vote.
All right, let's take this one offline because this is not the time to have this discussion. I think it would be nice if people have issues with certain things, that they present them as agenda items so that we can discuss them and have an actual conversation and not have them brought up. So, I mean, the risk management has been closed as long as I know. And so we can certainly have that conversation, but during the review of the meeting minutes is not the time.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, I wasn't questioning because it is in the rules. I was just wanting for the record there to be a statement as we are required to give of a purpose closed meeting.
Okay, well, I will make a
thank you.
note that we will get a statement regarding why the risk management meeting is closed.
Well, I think you said it because it can deal with potential litigation.
Okay, can I have someone, a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Lynn, any discussion? I would like to suggest that we move the board discussion around Newtown Charette up to the under board votes and include it with the revised Howard County General Plan update summary, since I suspect that's going to take more than 5 minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Or actually, any objections to moving that up? Thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have no residents signed up for resident speak out tonight. So we'll move on. On the consent agenda for this evening is the approval from the May 13th and May 27th meetings and the utility request for BG&E for Hickory Ridge. All right, now we're on to board votes. So first up is the limits on speaking time for CA board members. You should have my revised text from that issue based on our conversation last time around. Does anybody have any discussion around that? Then can I get a motion?
I move we approve the proposed board policy on speaking.
Thank you.
Second.
Andy?
Second.
Thank you.
This is Alan. I do have a question about intent.
Oh, sure.
On the work session's third bullet, it sounds like even though the time is up on something, that people will be having an opportunity to speak and extend the time. Is that what your intention was, or is that just meaning if we have the allotted time and we have approved an extension of the time, then only those who haven't yet spoken will be given an opportunity to speak? I'm not clear what your
Yeah,
intention
that's
was
actually
there.
a good point, Alan. I was thinking that people could have a final or a single opportunity to speak, but I think that that is an excellent point, and I would encourage everybody to try to speak before the time is up. So I will amend this to say when the board has agreed to extend the time limit. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
And the only other question I have, I agree that with the not repeating, but I wouldn't, I think we would miss out on something if we interpreted that to mean that we shouldn't say we do agree with somebody, because otherwise it's hard to say where the board is if all we have is, if one of us says something and nobody says anything else, we don't know whether they didn't say anything else because they didn't want to speak or because they didn't agree. So I'd want people to say, yes, I agree with that.
I'm fully in favor of people saying that they agree. What I'm not in favor of is them repeating everything they agree with. So that was the goal
Good.
of that.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I will hold Tina up as an excellent example of, I agree with so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and leaves it at that. And so that is kind of what I'm going for here, is that I agree, Alan. I think it's very important for us to understand whether or not other board members are agreeing or disagreeing. What I'm trying to avoid is just a repeat of the same verbiage to get there.
I'm all in favor of that.
Okay.
Last question I have is the board meetings point. That would seem to imply that we would not need any time for an item in a board meeting more than 40 minutes. Is that, or whatever, 10 times or 2 minutes times 2 times in the queue?
Yes, and hopefully a lot less.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, can I have a motion to accept this with the edit for any additional people speaking would be when the board has agreed to extend the time limit?
Moved.
So moved.
Thank you. So I'll say Tina moved and
Okay,
Ginny
that's fine.
seconded. All right, thank you. Okay, next up, I think, let's see, sorry, is the revised Howard County General Plan Update Summary. If you recall, in our last board meeting, we discussed approving Andy's statement. Yes, Andy.
Did you take the vote?
Oh, sorry, I did not.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
I'm like rolling right along.
I think you might want
Do we have any objections
I
to?
assumed it had
Yes.
passed also.
You're objecting, okay. So let me take a roll call vote then. All right, Sherry,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Tina,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Renee, no,
No.
Andy,
Yes.
and Lakey. Oh, I guess you,
I don't
Lakey
think
doesn't-
I
yeah,
get
you
to-
don't.
I will
Sorry, I'm like going
give
down the roll
my
call.
support. How about that?
All right, forgive me, I've been in the sun all day.
I know this isn't maybe, but at some point, I'd like to hear what your concern is, so maybe we could amend it later, okay?
Okay, now we can move on to the revised Howard County General Plan update summary. So in our last meeting, the board made the decision to create a subcommittee to discuss and work with Kristen on using Andy's statement to create a statement that we would vote on to go to Howard County government. So I'm going to ask Lakey to give some background on what has happened in the meantime, and then we can have that conversation.
Okay, so just as a quick framing, and worked directly with Kristen on this, as a reminder, Andy, Jenny, Lynn, Dick, Sherry, and Tina indicated interest in the subcommittee. Immediately after the board meeting, given that that was 2 weeks ago, we met internally as staff to come up with a plan of action. Kristen led the effort with Jessica's assistance and reached out to board members and was able to determine 2 times that captured all 6 people being able to participate, and everyone RSVP'd in the affirmative. 2 separate meetings were held in the interest of time and being able to be responsive. In those meetings, the feedback was generally positive of the kind of tweak statement that Kristen had taken. Again, Andy's base statement. Staff made some tweaks that frankly were really more organizational, not significant edits. In the meetings, the feedback was largely positive with some minor wording changes. And at the meetings, all participants decided that they felt it was in a good form and ready to go to the board. 2 people did not attend after they had indicated they were able to, and we did not receive anything from those participants, either in writing or verbally. And then I guess as a quick update, or they can speak for themselves, there was some email exchange a few hours ago. But we had prepped this, posted it with the agenda packet, had 4 of the members engaged, and felt comfortable that we were ready to vote on it. So that's the staff participation so far.
Thank you. So I also did not have time to read email sent an hour before the meeting. So do I have a motion to vote on what Kristen has proposed?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, so now we move on to discussion. Dick?
Yes. I apologize for not being at the meeting. I had surgery. I've been in a bit of a funk for the last couple of weeks. But I am feeling better now, and I did not take a look at this thing until a couple of days ago and started seeing what I found some problems. And I did a rewrite. I distributed it to some members of the committee to get some comments. And I think I have fixed some typos. I made some format changes. I added a few things that had been overlooked, and changed the intro a bit because I didn't really feel that it reflected who we are and what it is we're trying to do. There seemed to be an attitude in there that things have changed over the past 50 years, and we know so much more about city planning now than we ever did before. So let's and we're all smarter than Jim Rouse, so let's start over again and do it right this time. That seemed to be the attitude that I sensed. So I'm sorry that this didn't go out till the last minute, but like I said, I was indisposed until I was able to really attack this a couple days ago. I sent it to everybody, and I feel it's a better one than the one we had, but I would like the entire board to take a chance to read it and put this off for the time being.
Could I ask a point of information? Which agenda item were we on so I can time it properly?
Oh, right, sorry, Alan. So we're on 7B, but we have also added 5B, no, 7B and 7C.
7.
Okay, so we're,
The board.
oh, sorry.
7C.
I have an older, I had,
6B.
yes, I had
And we
an
added
old-
7C.
Thank you.
So 35 minutes if we were to combine the two times together.
Great. Thank you very much. That's what I thought. I didn't want to assume. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. So I will just make one comment, Dick. If you're going to create a lot of changes, tracking changes would be super helpful because it's impossible to tell what you changed or didn't change without trying to compare two documents side by side, which is really difficult to do. So,
Yes, I agree with you. I should have done that, but I didn't.
all right, Tina?
I have several process questions. Is it this board's normal practice to make a decision collectively to assign work to a subcommittee, to have that subcommittee work, to do the staff work involved with that subcommittee work, and then at the last minute to throw all of that work away? Because that's a colossal waste of time and energy and resources. Is this our typical process? Should I be aware of signing up for subcommittees in the future because it's not worth my time? Because we're just going to come together in open session and start over?
So I will tell you, Tina, that our use of subcommittees is fledgling. So
Okay.
certainly room for improvement. So that feedback is welcome, and I wholeheartedly agree. I also think that the board needs to accept the fact that if they sign up for a subcommittee, they're generally time sensitive.
Right.
And so,
So continuing in my inquiry, so staff arranged 2 separate meetings, and if I am understanding what Lakey reported correctly, all of the members of the subcommittee participated in one or both of those meetings. Did I get that correct?
No, there were 6 people in the subcommittee. All 6 affirmed that they would be able to attend the 2 meetings we scheduled, but only 4 participated. And until today, we had not heard from the other 2.
A point of information, not all members affirmed that they could meet those meetings.
Okay.
Because the meetings were held after other things, when there were already conflicts. I had mentioned this at our last meeting, that because staff has to get items up a week before, what that only allowed in this instance was for, in fact, less than a week for a board committee, a working group to meet. And since many of us are working people, it's not possible for us to rearrange a schedule within that 1 week time period. That was true for me. I did email Kristen about that. And I had previously emailed some suggestions, and I have brought several things up in the group. So I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding there. I do have concerns about the structure of any kind of subgroup or working group because of this conflicting time element where staff is under pressure to get something up for the next meeting, but board members may not be able to change their schedules around or find a time when they can meet. So that's something I think we have to look at as we go forward and ask, is it realistic to only have a week in which to work? Or do we need more time to do that and go for the next work session rather than the next voting session? Just something to think about.
Tina? Or was that from before? Sorry, I think.
No, this is a new one.
Okay.
Is the timing of this statement being dictated by forces outside of our control? In other words, the county's process is wrapping up, and we could be making if we don't move along, we could be making a statement 2 or 3 weeks after our process is ended about that process? Because that would look foolish. I don't want us to look foolish.
So my understanding is that this is something that needed to be done and completed and voted on by August. Is that right? At the end of the Newtown Charette discussions.
I think August. So we have
Kristen, can you confirm that? I think that was the timeline we were working toward.
The Newtown Charettes end in August. If that's the timeline that you were attempting to parallel.
That was what I understood from last meeting. Does anybody have a different understanding? Because I'm,
I'll weigh in that the timing in the discussion in the last meeting was that, at least as I recall it, was that there was a desire to get this position statement together to be able to feed it into the process prior to it closing. And the directive that I received was that we wanted to take Andy's statement, have staff edit it and kind of pull it together from, the draft kind of email that had been put in. And so I want to be clear, that was definitely the directive I took away from this meeting, was that it was now going to be on this agenda. So I agree with Sherry that in order to meet that timeline, we are operating inside a week. And so I had to pull staff from doing other things in order to put 2 separate meetings together to meet with board members to accommodate schedules. Again, my understanding was that everybody had responded, so perhaps I'm an error on that. But I will say that the timing was the directive that I got in the last board meeting. And I do agree that with meetings 2 weeks apart, operationally, we're really only talking about a week to respond to something. And I came out of the last meeting, and certainly when we amended the agenda to put this on it, with the directive that this had an urgency, that the board wanted to have this statement approved this evening.
and that was my understanding as well. Sherry, or Ginny?
What I am just trying to understand, based on what Kristen's telling us, I know I heard what you said at the last board meeting, but what I'm trying to understand now with what Kristen's saying, I know July 1st, and I don't know if it's a couple other days, there's some event that some of us signed up for. And then there's something in August that will actually show some designs, I believe. But what I'm trying to really understand is the next board meeting is what date? July
8th.
8th, Thursday, July 8th. I know that's normally, and I think it is a discussion time. We can vote on a discussion board meeting. We could amend the agenda to allow for a vote. So I guess what I'm trying to understand from Kristen is, would that time frame work or not? I just want to understand all the options for the board. Is that an
I mean, I don't know what, we can submit this document to the county anytime that we want to. The sooner the better. As you recall, when we did the planning and visioning project, our goal was to have a document to the county in the early part of 2021. Now we're in the second half, approaching the middle of 2021. So we can certainly give them anything at any point in time. It's just whether or not we're providing that to them in time for them to authentically incorporate and consider our comments as part of their process.
Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, more of a process comment going along with what Ginny said. We seem to be really fine with having discussion during voting meetings. I'm not sure why we can't have votes, short, like, 5-minute voting times during what we normally think of as work session times, and as long as we limit them in that way. So I'd be fine carrying this over till the next meeting.
I don't think that's really the issue. I mean, my concern here is that we as a board just said last meeting that this is what we wanted to do. And now here we are, minutes before the meeting, we get additional versions. And we have, we will be discussing our priorities later in this meeting. And if we expect to accomplish anything this year, we cannot operate in this way. That is the plain and simple of it. That we need to, if we're going to have subcommittees, and maybe we decide that those don't work, then we're going to spend an awful lot of time discussing things in meetings, which is the idea behind a subcommittee. That they can do some legwork, that they can come together, people that have, an interest in a particular topic, and they can work within that structure to provide information back to the board so that we can use it to further discussion. If we continue to push things, then we may as well start scratching priorities off our list, because if everything gets pushed 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, then, the roadmap that we create for, this kind of structure is just isn't going to work. So what I'd like to do is spend the rest of the conversation around what is here. Alan, I don't know if you want to tell us how much time we have left.
20 minutes remaining in both items.
Thank you. So what I'd like to ask is, Kristen, I'm looking at Andy's document compared to what your document has, and I'm curious, there were a number of items under the preserve section that were eliminated. So I was just curious if you felt like those had been consolidated. And Andy, I'm also interested in your perspective on that. Were there things there that you thought should continue to be represented in the document? So I'm going to let Andy talk first, and then Kristen, I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the document that came out of the subcommittee basically captured everything.
Okay.
They put it in a much nicer format. I mean, they really did. They consolidated things. There were a couple of things, but they were more to be held in for when we get to the next stage, which is the zoning. So they were probably not appropriate for the general plan, but they're the kind you want to keep around, you want to have documented, and know that you've got to really kind of address them at the next stage. So I think overall, the subcommittee did pretty well either address everything that was in there or held a couple things for the future. And Kristen and company said, yeah, they have all that documented.
Yes. Thank you. Kristen, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I did, when I was meeting with the subcommittees, I did actually show them a working document that kind of had my chicken scratch all over it, with little arrows and numbers showing, these items are being combined into this larger umbrella idea in a way to demonstrate wasn't eliminating any topics or any of the priorities that were laid out in Andy's memo. So either things were, in my opinion, combined to be more succinct and, more of an umbrella type of concept, or a few things, as Andy mentioned, I did say these need to be reworded in a way that prepares us for the zoning rewrite or other studies in the future.
Thank you. Sherry?
In Kristen's document, and maybe you can help me to see this, but I don't see much in terms of mentioning Newtown. And since this topic is being addressed now and in the HOCO by design as Columbia and Newtown, it might be helpful to change the title to position statement on Howard County General Plan, Columbia and Newtown. That would signal to our community that it's about Columbia, Newtown. I also had some concerns because people have been talking about Newtown zoning and what that means.
I'm sorry. Sherry, can you just back up 1 second and give
Yeah.
me your title again?
All right, so it's what's here.
Yeah.
Position statement on the Howard County General Plan, comma, Columbia and Newtown.
Okay. Thank you. All right, your next point, sorry.
I thought it was important to mention Newtown zoning, at least in the introduction, to explain how Columbia was created and why our villages look and feel the way they do. This was an essential part of creating a different look from what had been there before, and in fact, what many other parts of the county look like. So I think it's sort of an omission. I understand what Andy was saying about sort of setting that aside for the next piece, but I know people in the community are talking about this. So some bit of history, I think Dick's pieces were useful in explaining, especially the second paragraph, underlying values, rational land use, meaningful open space, socioeconomic diversity, respect for the environment, stewardship. Those are all part of what went into Newtown zoning. So without calling it Newtown zoning, that's really a description of much of what was part of it. So I think that would be a good paragraph to insert. And I also want to mention 2 other things. Just the consultants have made a point of emphasizing why a sense of community character is so important in different areas of Howard County. And so the other thing that is not mentioned here are the villages of Columbia. They're not named.
Village centers are named.
Village centers, but village centers as centers of commerce are different from the villages themselves. And we have 10 villages. The structure here in this room that we're sitting in is designed around that. So that's an important part of community character. I think if you travel to different areas around Columbia, you know that the villages have a different sense. And in fact, we've been talking about creating even more diversity in the villages and in village centers. So instead of being cookie cutter, they become distinct places for experiences. So that might be something to add, something about the 10 villages of Columbia as distinct and significant places. That would give some push to that. And I also wanted to refer to something Lynn brought up at our last meeting about the density issue. That was sort of avoided here. Columbia's villages are, in fact, built out according to the Rouse Master Plan. I mean, we're built out. I mean, 100,000 people. So what occurred to me is what additional construction or deconstruction needs to occur to keep Columbia economically viable without sacrificing character, quality of life, or environmental sustainability. I've been hearing allusions to this in the PAC discussions as this has been going along. So if things are going to change, it's not just construction of new, but it may be deconstruction of older pieces, what has been there, in order to create a new sense of balance around Columbia and Newtown. And I think that there were pieces in Dick's statement also that kind of alluded to
Sherry,
that.
your time is up.
Yeah.
All right. Jess, you're up.
So I had put in the chat, as did Tina, I would like to call Elmo on this. I think we have a document that was prepared by a subcommittee of the board, and the work was done, and I think we should either vote to accept it or not. And if people don't want to accept it, then they can go back to the drawing table. But I agree with you, Janet. I think we just need to move along. There is no perfect document, and I'd like to just make a decision about this one.
Yeah, so there is a motion on the table. This is the discussion portion, and we have the allocated time. So, but thank you, Jess. Alan, you're up.
Yeah, I just want to say, I don't see a committee, unless it's just a report that a committee is providing us, we just say, yes, we have received it. I don't see committee work as simply a vote up or down. I see committee work as getting us to second base or third base or whatever, and then we as a board discuss it and take it the rest of the way there. So I would not want to see us do committees where we don't believe that we can be massaging, editing, enhancing, improving the good start that the committee gives us.
I think the key is that this was expected to be included in Friday's materials, which it was, and so that if anyone had comments, then they could have addressed them at any time this week prior to this meeting.
Well, and we all have lives, and that's not always possible. That's why we have meetings and time on the agenda to discuss things.
Dick?
Yes, this document has a long evolution. It started out with the consultant's report. Then Andy took that and shaped it into something a little more reasonable. And then we got the committee working on it. Kristen worked on it. And there's a lot of good stuff in the one that we were presented a week ago, 2 weeks ago. But it really reads like it was written by a committee. And one of the things I tried to do when I took another shot at it, and again, I apologize for throwing a boot in the machinery here, but I really felt that if we're going to take something to the county that represents CA, it should be polished. And I don't feel that the document that we are talking about right now is polished. I think it leaves some things out. I think it misrepresents some things. And I would really hope that we could put this vote off until the work session so that everybody's had a chance to just look at this document. The whole board has a chance to comment on it. I can revise it as necessary. But the document we have right now, I don't feel is worthy of the Columbia Association.
Okay, Tina, and then I think Jess is right that we need to decide whether we're voting on this tonight or whether we're going to continue working on it.
So was Dick making a motion to table?
No one has made a motion to table. That's what I'm waiting for.
I'll make the motion.
Should we have a second?
Remind me about Robert's rules. A table isn't debatable.
We have to vote on the other one first.
No, table
Okay.
isn't debatable, but I don't even know if it requires a second, does it, for sure? Anybody read Robert's rules? Second. It does require
Needs a second.
But it's not debatable, right? It is or isn't?
Yeah, it is,
It is? Okay, I
It
always
is.
heard it wasn't, okay.
but it takes precedence.
Okay, so
Oh, it
Dick
does
has,
take precedent.
Dick has moved to table this discussion. Sherry has seconded. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah,
Jenny?
briefly. I totally agree with what Janet is saying in terms of the need for us to be disciplined. And one, I am really a big proponent of subcommittees. I think that's the only way to function, quite frankly. You got to be selective on what topics you pick, but you certainly have to have subcommittees. So I don't want to lose the subcommittee concept at all based on this experience. I am feeling that we were under a lot of pressure, and I'm sort of not really hearing a really good response to whether, my God, this has to be voted on tonight, or we could change the agenda for the 8th and actually have this as a vote then, have the subcommittee meet again, and anybody else look at the different options and really be prepared with a document prior to the 8th, because it will have to be advertised anyway and published. I'm sort of torn between whether this is really worth this. It was thrown together. Yes, we had a lot of time. So I can see both sides of this, but I don't want to split the board on our first attempt at working together is what I'm concerned about. Is it worth it, or let's just put a little more effort into this and make a commitment here.
Okay, I believe Alan has called out that Robert's rule says that there's no discussion for a table.
That's what I said before, but everybody allowed the discussion, so I should.
Well, I'm cutting you off, so thank you. All right, we're going to take a roll call vote over tabling. Sherry?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Tina?
No.
Jess?
No.
Alan?
Yes to table the, I love, continue,
Yes, to
last
table.
5 minutes.
Renee?
Yes.
Andy?
No.
And I'm going to vote no, so that passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 4. All right, let's move on to our
I
next.
have a
Yes.
point of clarification. So I rearranged staff resources to meet this deadline, and it has now been delayed 2 weeks. So I want to be clear whether there's an expectation that staff is still involved, or is now the board meeting as a subcommittee and developing this board statement on their own.
All right, then, Ginny.
Yeah, I think it should be the board's responsibility. And I think that, you know, we're sort of learning our way with this new subcommittee. The board has not operated with committees for many, many years.
Okay.
So with thanks to Kristen and Jessica, I know this was the second time that they worked with Andy and on this document. I think it should be the board's responsibility to come back with a
Can we get a
recommendation.
timeline here? Because I'm not waiting another 2 weeks to hear that we don't have something, so it's, but
Well,
before
I
next.
think we
I would
said
suggest that.
July 8th.
No, but I think what
But it
Janet.
has to be done the Friday before to post, and then it has to be done before so that you can send it out to the board for feedback.
week. We've
So
got-
you have 4 days,
We have to meet
essentially.
next week. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should raise my hand. did raise
I
my
just,
hand.
I'm very frustrated by this. I'm just, I think that's obvious, but I think it's fine. We voted to table. We have to move on, but this has to have a timeline and it has to be
Have a
adhered to.
suggestion.
So what is the date before?
It has to be published by next Friday.
So what is the date before the July 8th? What is the date when it has to be
We
posted?
should be meeting next Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, Monday or Tuesday as the subcommittee to be working on this, and I would like to
July
respectfully.
2nd
Yes.
is the Friday.
Yeah, but we can't wait. We got to meet next Monday or Tuesday
That's
on
my
this,
point,
guys.
is that the board better
that's
have
what
at
I'm
least
saying.
2 days to look at
I'm
it
saying,
before it's.
Just to clarify, normally we require all documentation when we as staff are preparing, because again, staff have to then post, close of business on the Thursday, which is the 1st, which allows 1 of 2 people that post to have time, because
July
they receive
1st.
all that documentation all separately, and then we have to compile it, match it up to the agenda, put it into a PDF, upload it onto the
That
website. so
July
that's-
1st is you're saying?
Yes, close of
is your day.
business,
So,
yes.
so the committee should meet Monday, would be really the best time to meet. And I would like to respectfully say that, I'm sorry, I disagree, but I think this, Kristen and Jessica really should be there.
I don't think that's fair.
No?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
You know, I think we can speed this along. I have sent my draft out asking people for comments. It's on, you know,
I'm not going to sift through yours and compare it to the other one. I'm just going to be pretty blunt about that. I
okay, well,
think.
don't. I have sent it out there. I think it's there for comments. And I will, I'll incorporate those comments, and then we'll have a document.
All right, we have 1 minute. Tina, did you have a final comment?
Yeah, it makes no sense to use Dick's draft when staff and board put something together already. Why are we throwing that work away? That's not logical and it's not efficient. If Dick has changes he wants to bring back to the subcommittee, perhaps we could do that. And I would suggest that the subcommittee meet again on Monday evening and take Dick's suggestions for changes at that time and not start over from his document. I mean, that's like
Can't meet.
we're throwing every bit of work away that we've done before. That doesn't make any sense.
Andy?
Monday evening is the audit committee meeting. So
Yeah,
let us
we can't
please
meet.
Right, Monday night is the audit committee meeting. So
have
I'm
to
going to
meet-
suggest that the subcommittee take a poll, and whatever the majority can make, that's what's going to have to happen, so.
And it would be Monday, so whatever time will work for everyone or the majority of the subcommittee, we have to meet, guys, to be fair to everybody to get this done, okay? So,
Those of us with full-time jobs need something in the evening then. Because that's not fair to everybody either, right? And we want to make
Well, I
sure that
think in the
the
interest of time,
functioning of
Tina,
the
and the
board
rest of the
is available to people who work.
I think that's legitimate, except that if Monday evening is the only time you can meet between now and next, whatever, I don't know, Thursday. I think it has to be the majority of the subcommittee has to decide that timing. So, unfortunately, if you're severely constricted, it may be that the timing doesn't work out for you this time around. That doesn't mean the subcommittee will continue because there's additional work to be done on this. And I mean, I don't know if that's a new subcommittee or what, but Andy?
I would suggest that it would really help if Dick would just send out what changes he wants to the actual document, to the subcommittee document, because it would make it so much easier to kind of.
I can do that.
You do the comparison, because otherwise
Sherry, too, had
we
some
are
good-
stuck trying to.
I can,
Sherry
agree.
had some
That would
Okay.
help a lot.
ideas.
I think we are out of time on
You had
this.
some really good.
So I'm just going to summarize, though, what I think we just decided, and please speak up if you disagree with me. The subcommittee will meet. We'll have a document for the board to look at for comments. I would like it to be by next Tuesday, but at least by next Wednesday, because this document has to be completed and ready for upload for the materials for the next meeting by close of business next Thursday.
Okay. So we definitely have to meet on Monday, and let's just,
All right, we're done.
okay.
Please give this back to me. Thank you. Okay. Okay, moving on, board discussion. We, first up is President CEO fiscal year 22 goals and objectives. Lakey?
Apologies. Can everyone see that presentation? It's not in, that's strange. Okay. So I would like to stand because I prefer to talk while standing. So we move this in as we start to all move towards some normalcy of gathering together. And this is my opportunity to lay out the goals and objectives from my perspective as President CEO. I will remind everyone that it will be next week. I will have been here for 2 months. So it has not been very long, but I am hitting the ground running and trying to acclimate as quickly as I can. And I certainly have some good, positive early indicators. I was just going to quickly give a context that I spent a good bit of time the first few weeks focused internally, both with staff and individual board members and have really been able to start to talk to a lot more external stakeholders in the community, and have found that both an encouraging experience as well as learning a lot and gaining some perspective on how CA is viewed throughout the community. The last thing I'll say before I dig in is that this, for me, given my short tenure as I'm getting started, is really about defining direction, and I think each of these items will be fleshed out, you know, week by week, month by month, feeling like I will share some specific ideas that are already kind of underway. But excited to be here and very encouraged by what I have already discovered and thoughts about the future positioning for the organization and Columbia as a whole. This had worked so well when we tested it earlier. There we go. Okay. So first, stewardship.
It didn't update here.
So I'm going to speak to the looming support of IT. The one in Google's Meets didn't move. Okay. Well, I'll keep talking. All of this is in the board packet that was provided online. So first, focusing on stewardship of resources. I think a big part of this is really that a lot has been done very well already. It's more about updating around process and making sure that we're really increasing and enhancing understanding, I think, externally more than anything. Really continuing a lot of good decisions that I know were very hard decisions being made during the pandemic around streamlining and a lot of process improvement and a lot of good decision making around how do we dig into priorities and make sure that we're shepherding the right things forward. Feeling like we have a lot to build on there. I think in terms of reframing the budget discussions, the real key there is the discussion is the piece of that. How we do that both internally, but also how we do that with the community. So making sure that we're talking about trade-offs, and I think a key way to do that in my experience is really bringing more scenarios forward and being able to say, there is a trade-off if we go in this direction versus this direction. In a community-serving organization, it is very important to understand that no decision is made in isolation. And I think that making sure that our budget discussions are transparent and that we make sure that we're engaging people in that conversation. You'll notice the next bullet really highlights both residents and commercial property owners. Those are our lien holders, and I think it's important that we understand their priorities. I will touch again on ideas around that engagement. But I think that you'll see, even starting with this year's annual charge package that is mailed out to lien holders, it is very clear that is one key touch point we have annually, and we wanted to make sure to start our change in the way we're going to be doing communication around this process already with that mailing. And then I really just want to continue and be clear that I am committed to an ongoing assessment of the programs and services and really looking at that relevance and impact and embedding that in the organization. That is not only an annual process. I think that making sure that we are getting our evaluation both internally and externally, you know, quantitative and qualitative, but it really is about making sure we're taking that step around postmortems and retrospectives and what is working and what is not. I will again touch on this, but I think it's directly relevant to the budget. I feel like the stewardship of resources is something that is ingrained in this organization, and perhaps more importantly, the budget is really one of many tools that demonstrates where our priorities are. And I think it's important that that process be transparent and accessible as we move that forward. And again, Maybe I just have to walk over to this.
I think you need to pet it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that'll work. So next, relevance is a key partner. This is a really interesting one, and one that I certainly knew that I wanted to focus on engagement coming in, but I think that really making sure that we are reestablishing, because certainly Columbia Association has been that, and in some ways is still that, but I think we frankly have some work to do on reestablishing ourselves as a progressive community leader, both in Columbia, but also nationally. So really focusing on building connections that I think are making sure we're staying relevant and connected to our long-established partners, but also thinking about those who have not been historically engaged, and how can we better do a job at partnering with those kinds of either individual stakeholders or organizations that will be a benefit for Columbia. So one of the key things that I think is really important for an organization this complex and in a community as special as Columbia is that we already have respected partners in the community. How can we join forces with them? We certainly should not be allocating our resources to replicating efforts or duplicating efforts that are already happening. And I think that around diversity, equity, inclusion, that is one where we really want to lean on partners to make sure that we're doing it well, we're doing it thoughtfully, and we're doing it in a meaningful way. And that has to move past discussion and into action. So I am proud to find what I already have within CA around work with our DEI committee that was formed with employees, and feedback we're already incorporating that is changing some processes inside the organization. I think we have a lot of work to do outside the organization. I've already started some of those conversations, and there's a lot of interest on how CA can come to the table as a meaningful partner across Columbia. So more to come on that, as we're able to actually outline what that action looks like. Ensuring the complexity of CA is easy to navigate. So I have heard this, that people can connect to CA in so many different ways and not realize, you might connect around watershed and not be thinking about our facilities, or you might come in, with school services, but not be connecting to, our volunteer opportunities. So that is not on our stakeholders, our residents, our property owners to figure out on their own. That is our responsibility to make it much easier. I think that is a process that is going to be pretty multifaceted. It's both our staff, it's our actual buildings, and it certainly is our digital presence as well. Again, you'll hear some common themes around transparency and accessibility in this case as well. And then I really am excited about the opportunity for hiring some of our senior team members as I'm coming in, that is going to allow us to really have an eye towards how are we strategically positioning for the future. And by that, I mean really an opportunity with initiating some national searches to make sure that we are getting a diverse candidate pool, but also a highly qualified that's bringing a different kind of experience to CA, and one that I think will benefit Columbia in the long run. Now I'm going to run quickly over here. Okay, so community engagement. This one is always close to my heart and something I have a lot of experience in. And I think we have practically boundless opportunities to make improvements here and make increases. First and foremost, the digital experience matters a lot. In today's world, it is our front door, and ours needs, some improvement. And we're aware of that, and we're actively working on that. I'm very happy with the update we did seasonally for Summer is Back. And, we're going to keep doing this incrementally. Doing it is a huge overhaul. Frankly, it's not even a resource proposition as much as we have to step back from our ability to engage if we do that. So we're committed to it incrementally. seasonally around programs, but keep in mind, we are looking all at the back end of how those pieces fit together, and I want to make sure that we're bringing new forums and new tools to our toolbox as well, and we're already looking and assessing it at many of those things internally. Increasing CA's engagement with the Howard County planning process is, a demonstration here this evening. How are we doing that? Making sure that we stay committed to the timeline so that we get that input in. How are we representing CA? It matters that residents directly get involved, but making sure our voice, and we talked about this at our last session, is really being I think, platformed as the representative organization across Columbia. I think that our ability to engage in that space has a lot to do with our ability to engage in these two other spots. So one thing that I really want to do, and these words were chosen carefully, frame out, vet, and pilot, something that would be like a CA 101. And I want to be clear that there's a lot of different ways to go at this, and I want to be careful that there's, when these terms are put out, people can have connotations. This will not be a, hi, come find out about CA and we can tell you what we do. This is going to be very much a bi-directional engagement that is, you want to make a difference in Columbia, how can you engage with CA to do that? How can CA be shaped by your engagement? So it is not a talking at, and it is not a talking heads. I think that we could even start to conceive of our advisory committees and how are we engaging with those when we talk about these 101 sessions. So this is something that I really intend to frame out and then start to do kind of small tests of before we try and launch a big giant program. People from my conversations are hungry for this, but they're not quite sure what they're hungry for. So I'm willing to test it and make sure that we get that feedback and incorporate it and build out something we can be proud of. And I frankly am hopeful we'll become a model regionally, if not beyond. And then lastly, really committing to interactive sessions around a variety of topics, and ones that have already come up that we're starting to figure that out, and really using our village system to get that communication and engagement. So this could be anything from watershed, energy management, covenants. There's always questions about what's in covenant versus what's in zoning. So really making sure we're bringing that kind of information and education directly to citizens. I think an ability to engage at the village level with the board, the CA board representative, and then open to the public. And we really want to be responsive to what it is people want to have more information on.
I can do that for you.
Oh, no, this is the last, no, this is the last one, we're done. So what is the next normal? I think, and many staff have heard me already say this, we are not going to be going back to normal, right? And even as a country, as a globe, we're not going back to normal. It really is about what is our next business model? How are we operating? And this is opportunity. This is not pessimistic view. This is an opportunistic view. So how are we going to go about doing that? Working with the senior leadership team, and we're already down the road on this. I've really dug in with each team to understand where are the streamlined operations, what were the decisions that were made during the pandemic that we want to pull forward, that we want to continue, but on the other hand, what do we want to make sure that we shed, that we take a moment and say, what might we want to change about this? But part of that is really making sure that this isn't just a list of positions, it's also team structure. And so we'll be really taking a finer tooth comb to that over the next 10 months. I think it's critically important for the service that has been done during the pandemic. We had a majority of our employees on site and in the field well before there were vaccinations. These are people that were dedicated to CA, dedicated to this community, and very proud of the work they're doing. And I want to make sure they understand that we value them and they are an important piece of this community. We are one of the larger employers in Columbia, and we have to remember we have that role as much as we do in service. Ensuring all operations and service decisions, you will hear this a lot, staff has heard this, stop, start, change. We are not married, we are not governed to do everything we do. There are some things we absolutely are required to do, but there are many other things that we need to make sure stay relevant, stay impactful. And then lastly, working inside of our operations to incent that collaboration and cross-function. Some groups and teams are doing that really well, and some, frankly, are not. And we need to make sure that we are doing everything from the way that we're funding to the way we're staffing to build that in and flex that muscle internally, because I deeply believe that the solutions are much more effective and definitely across the board more relevant when we have more ideas at the table. So really moving out of any remaining silos, a lot of work has been done there, but kind of making sure we get across the goal line on that one. That is my last slide. I'm not going to run away from the podium again. So I'm happy to answer questions or comments.
Dick?
That was terrific.
Thank you.
I am really impressed. You really summed up where we got to go and what we got to do. I was wondering if you explain stop, start, change assessments. That's a phrase I've never heard before.
Okay, so I think it's buzzwords that can mean a lot of different things, but it's really making sure that we have constant evaluation and that we don't just do something because we've done it before, and that every time we make a decision or implement something, including seasonally, we say, should we be doing this? Should we be starting something different? Should we modify it? I think that as organizations age, it can become very easy to, now it's April. We do this every April. And sometimes that's completely relevant. And so you say, we are going to keep doing it. But sometimes you need to build in kind of a discipline around understanding you're making a choice on a constant basis.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Lakey? Thank you, Lakey. Those were very thorough, and I think your sub-bullets summed up what was intended to be included under that very well.
Inspirational, definitely.
Yeah, great job.
Okay, then we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the board priority review. So Lakey sent out a summary of things from our retreat that we prioritized. So let me just make a couple of comments on that one. One, there is additional detail that will be coming. This was in the interest of time to make sure that these materials could be posted for this packet. So the top 4 were included. The next steps were left off intentionally as we flesh those out, because that will be our responsibility to continue to create what those next steps are. And then as a follow-up item, I'm in the process of taking this document and creating a roadmap that we can use as a framework once we start deciding what those next steps are. And some of them we have from that discussion, to make sure that it provides a visual period of what we're talking about and how it lays out, because what we want to make sure that we don't overlap the priorities so much so that we're not able to stick to what we're trying to accomplish. So there are some things that will require staff input. There are some things that will require heavier board input. And so that is my proposed path forward. But I'd like to open the floor up for the discussion on this one, but I just want you to know that by early next week, I will have that roadmap framework out to you all that includes all of this information. And then we're going to have to figure out how best to move forward with these, because this is a topic that's on all of our future agendas. And the idea will be that, one, we as a board create those action items, and then two, we as a board come back and report out on those action items. And some of those might be fairly simple, like I scheduled this meeting and we had it, and some of them might be a little bit more in-depth. So, we have to keep all of that in mind and then try to balance the number of things that we're trying to accomplish. Okay, so that said, anybody that would like to start discussion on any of the priority items? Andy?
Actually, more, I'll say, on the process. Because these are ambitious. And I'm not sure we can do all the stuff we need to at the board level. And I'm wondering if we're going to make a commitment to like working groups for some of these. Because, some can be handled, at least, initial type work and response and things like that at a working group, and then, can bring it back to the board. But I'm just not sure that if we just have the entire board do all this.
Yeah, 100% agree. So I think, yes, I think a couple of things. One, we have to keep in mind we have essentially 10 months to accomplish all of these things. And in 10 months, a lot happens, right? And but it's a very short period. Like, a lot happens in our lives, and it's also a very short period of time. So the way I look at it, and when I work in agile development, what we call MVP, minimum viable product. And so we're going to have to decide as a board, what is the minimum that we want to accomplish for this priority? Any of these priorities could continue beyond 1 year, but we want to make sure that we make progress on them. And so, one of the things that, and obviously the biggest and most important one, I think, out of these priorities is the president and CEO evaluation. The second thing that I'm in the process of doing is taking what Monica had presented to us, and I'm going to put out a suggestion for the board to respond to. I feel like that tends to generate better discussion than like the free flow. So I will put together something, send it out to the board, and then the board can say, well, I like that, but I hate that, and discuss. But, we have committed to trying to have that completed by the end of the summer, or actually the end of July, I think. So again, I will have my proposal to the board by the beginning of next week. And then I will ask that you take a week, to get information and feedback back to me so that by the second meeting of July, we can vote on that. So that's the goal with that particular one. Yes, legal.
I would add, and you alluded to it, but I guess I have what I believe is an addition, not a repeat, that when we dig into these action items, I think one of the key things is that we're breaking these big pieces of work into smaller pieces of work. And so there really does start to be an incremental order. And so I think that we, and as was kind of discussed with the subcommittee, in building this muscle, part of it is going to really be, for this group, is how do we make sure we keep it moving? So perhaps to your point, it's maybe we can't in 10 months accomplish the vision statement, but we can accomplish these progress measurements, right? Or at least that's how I kind of am reading it and thinking about it.
And also remind everyone, I think we as a group decided that we would make sure to include diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything. Keep that as a consideration for each of these items and how it applies and how we continue to look at it through that lens to ensure because, that's a pretty big one on its own. So I think the first step for that is to apply it across the board. Yeah, Lynn.
And I think the same thing with community engagement. This is obviously ongoing. It's got to be very much, in everything we do. So don't know whether we have like the ultimate goals. I mean, I think we need to engage the villages. We need to certainly engage other parts of the community and so much of what we do right now.
Thank you. Tina, Alan, then Ginny.
I just wanted to thank you very much for the words that you just said about DEI. I appreciate that a lot.
Oh, thank you, Tina. Alan?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it would be, I don't want to make unnecessary more work for you, but when you do your rewrite of these things, if maybe that's just another bullet, another heading. DEI, community impact, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
For consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And those should be lined out a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. Ginny?
Yeah, on the two of these, one, the CA President, CEO evaluation. I'm sorry, forget that one. Community engagement. Based on what, Lakey, your presentation was, you've got some phenomenal ideas how you see staff and you doing that, and the board. So I think this is one where it's extremely important that we don't duplicate effort, that we're on the same track or we'll confuse everybody. So that's one where I see really working closely with you. On Symphony Woods, I see that as very much staff involvement. In fact, more than staff, perhaps, outside involvement. That is a very complicated, complex issue. And so I hope, we've got to really figure out how to do that.
Lakey?
I think it's important in this discussion to state, and this might sound a little counterintuitive at first, but to state what is not here. And perhaps because this is our first time discussing our board priorities, to make the statement that we're already saying we can't accomplish all of this in 10 months. Which I think is true.
I didn't say that.
Right? Okay, I'm sorry. Janet, Miss Agile can.
That at all. I think we.
Okay, it's a lot. How about that? That's fair. And I am hopeful we will get there. I'm on that side as well. But I guess one thing that is, I think, important as we start this discussion is to say, how are we as a group going to deal with all the other things that are going to keep coming?
Right.
And so from a board time allocation standpoint, but also, again, a lot of this will need staff resources, and these are important matters and should have staff resources. But perhaps we need to give thought to, do these get more time on the agendas versus other items that come up? How are we going to make that decision? I think if we can come up with some thoughts around that prior to facing it in a time crunch, that might also be useful for discussion.
And I'll just throw in there, one of the questions we often ask in my company is, what does success look like? And so I think we sort of built that in, but it doesn't, what success looks like can have shades of gray, right? And so I think we do need to think about, what's the minimum we are willing to accept to meet this priority, is the way I would look at that, so that we ensure that we're working towards something that's realistic and that we don't get too far into the weeds or try to, swallow the ocean, and make sure that we are creating things that are achievable so that at the end of the year we can say, look what we've accomplished. Mm-hmm. Sherry?
Yeah, I think Lynn's point is well made, that in the sense of not only what will we consider to be success, but what will the larger community consider to be success? Are we building synergy with the concerns of our various communities throughout our villages? So that's another point. We can't be in some ways as insular as we have sometimes been in the past.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know this discussion is a little unstructured tonight, so moving forward, I would expect that it will be more structured as we create these plans and the groups that are working on them. at this point, if you have suggestions, and I mean right now, as in not like don't email them, but we have a little bit of time, I would welcome your suggestions for ways to help format this information going forward. Sherry?
Yeah, there was one thing that I was thinking about in terms of what often intervenes.
Yeah.
So I was trying to, what has pulled our attention away? The legislative issues is something that, we've got as an agenda item, but, are we going to meet the built-in deadlines that are part of that process? Because if we're going to be more engaged with the community and then funnel through the board and through CA to testimony or anything of that kind, we need to really be on top of what are we looking at in terms of deadlines and processes at that level. So, that's just something to think about. Where might that fit in our agendas? Is there a particular series of months that we have to flag? That kind of thing. And so if you're looking at the big calendar, where do you plug in those key dates and deadlines?
Lynn?
Yeah, well, we have two that are obviously very time sensitive, the CEO evaluation and the general plan. And those I think have to take priority at this point. I would like to see those some way, certainly, especially with the general plan. It's a perfect opportunity to get some community engagement. And we should look at where we want, how we can funnel that out. What form are we going, would we want information to be given and received? Do we want it through village boards? Do we want it through other groups? Do we want town hall meetings? What do we want? And who do we want the information from?
And I think to that, along the same lines, is that if we're talking about community engagement and we're talking about, I think you were mentioning synergies, and I think we absolutely have opportunities for synergies with community engagement in particular across the board, and particularly with the general plan, but also with, other than the CEO evaluation, I think there is a community engagement component of just about everything we do. And so much like the diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think that is something, although we have that specified as its own, and I think that we can come up with specific goals directed at particular pieces of that, there is a much broader, because, we want more people, and we want different people, and we want people from different areas and locations, and all of that. So
Who do we invite in?
Jenny?
Yeah, one of our roles, though, also would be to help educate our people. Yes, I hear what you're saying, Sherry, in terms of we want to make sure we listen to them and that we don't miss anything. But on the other hand, there are issues that perhaps we need to educate people about that are pretty serious, and we want to get them involved. So how do we do that? And one of the things I'd love to see us start looking at is hiring or having speakers series on certain topics, consultants on certain topics. Have it on the web so that people can look at it anytime, day or night, as well as attend a town hall meeting where they can ask questions, et cetera, so it'd be more interactive. But that would be really helpful in the general plan specifically. The CEO thing, that's going to end, if we do it right, in the end of July. It's over. Well, not, I mean,
Then I'm in the clear.
Keep in mind, we are going to do a mid-year review, just so the board's aware.
good luck on your next job. No, we're kidding, we're kidding. No, I just mean the process is done with. So this is I shouldn't use the word slam dunk, but I think it probably will be. The other three, just add to that budget. Hello, that's a major undertaking, and there'll be some votes early, there'll be some in September. So that is a major thing on our plate. The legislative, I absolutely agree with you, and it's not just the state legislature, there's county legislation that we need to be paying more attention to. My problem there is we don't have any staff person, or do we have a staff person that will sort of be looking at those bills, or we do have a lobbyist certainly, but we need to know in a timely fashion. Time is essential with a 90-day session, so that's another big thing on our
I can
plate.
provide one bit of information. So as you know, we do have an outside law firm that does all of the state, but internally on our legal team, we do track the county and keep an eye on that. And that's how we saw the recent.
CB 52. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we do keep an eye on that.
Or it didn't become CB 52.
Correct. Correct.
It's more like it. Yeah, that was a good one. Okay.
I, for one, am relieved that one of our priorities will be done by July. So,
I mean, that's the way I look at it, so, but we've just added 2 more here, so we now are,
well, I think those are built in every year, right?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just excited about ad hoc committees, subcommittees, whatever we want to call it. And everything you've said is in terms of, yes, we will take it seriously. So I think we cannot function without that, absolutely cannot function without that. And without staff help on a lot of things as well.
Andy?
Shara reminded me of something, we talked about the legislative and, bills coming up. But redistricting is coming up, especially at the county level. And so there's just a question for the board, just to think about it. Is there a role for us? And should there be a role for us? And I'll just give you my opinion. Right now, there are 3 county council districts that have a significant portion of Columbia. Could be that go around, maybe that won't happen. So it's just something to think about that could have a major impact.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and it's just more, is there a role for this board? And what should that role be? And of course, it fits right in with community engagement to talk to the community. But that's like one of those every 10-year type things that just happen that,
Very significant.
put in to the plan.
Good call out.
Or where the village boards fit in on that.
Well,
Exactly.
everybody, yeah. But
Everybody.
it's an opportunity,
Community
if you think,
associations.
of working together collaboratively with the villages, with other organizations. And I focus on the county, but the state will also redistrict and yeah.
All right, any further questions or comments on board priorities?
Oh, great job.
Exciting.
Okay, so more to come.
Yep.
All right, so 7C, we moved up per our previous amendment. So we will move on to number 8. Are there any questions regarding chair's remarks, president's report, Inter Harbor Trust, and tracking forms? Lakey and then Andy?
I don't have a question about my report, but I wanted to say something about it. So I just want to point out it isn't in a new format, and the goal there was to distill and streamline the information into key and salient points and make it easily digestible for anyone that is interested. So it will continue to evolve, but just wanted to point that out. And I did want to mention something related to that does not appear in the report, just given how the timing worked, that I wanted to make this group aware that we are starting, actually, these interactive sessions I mentioned in my general comments. We are putting together some workshops that we're going to host across the villages around kind of the topic that gets really commingled and packed together with covenants and zoning and design. And so this is not the big rezoning that is going to be happening. This is our exercise of, we get so many questions that, is it CA's responsibility? Is it the county's? Or is it design? And that's really more of a development-specific idea. So that is something that really has already risen to the top as a key topic that's a point of conversation. That's something that I wanted, and Kristen brought it to my attention, that we are starting the process of reaching out to the village boards to schedule those. So we will be inviting the village board, each CA village representative, though of course you can attend any you would like, and also all residents. So we have not fleshed that out. The goal for that is going to be in the fall, but I just wanted to get it on the radar because we're going to start hearing rumbling because we're putting it on the schedule. And so just to give you context, as we build that out, I'll be happy to give some updates on it, but that's just conceptually what it is. So wanted to make sure you're aware.
Thank you. Andy and then Alan?
When we combined the general plan and the new town charrette, we never actually gave Kristen an opportunity to say what's happening next Thursday. So I'll just phrase that in, Kristen, I have a question of what's happening next Thursday.
I was just thinking that.
And I can weigh in.
Sorry, my screen, I couldn't find you. Hang on. Okay, here we are. Next Thursday, July 1st, the county is offering a series of 6 different charrettes. They will be in person, held here in Columbia, but by the county. They are having 6 to keep the attendance low at each meeting for the comfort of everybody as we kind of start to do things in person. But there will also be an online option for people who are still not ready to do that in person. The topics of discussion will be village centers, commercial corridors, and employment centers. So please go to one of the 6 45-minute shifts or attend whatever the online option is that they have. As we've been saying, the more voices, the louder we are.
Thank you, Kristen.
And Kristen has sent that out to all the board members, and we can include that in our social media if we have not already. Forgive me if we already have, but we are making sure that people are aware, and I know Kristen also got that out to all the villages as well.
Thank you. Alan and then Dick?
Yeah, thanks. This is sort of a couple of comments on the president's report. I appreciate the smaller than it's been in the past, easier to digest, as you said. One thing, and I am great hearing about events, and I'm absolutely great hearing about points of pride. One thing that we emphasized with the previous president was we didn't want this to be merely a puff piece about how wonderful we are. And so while recognizing that some things need to be done in closed session, I'm not talking about those things, but we had asked the president to make sure that this report included mention of challenges as well. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Okay, I appreciate the feedback. I'm happy to share that the top challenge right now is hiring and training for lifeguards to open the 2 outdoor pools. Our major sticking point is around managers in particular, but we have hired and we are in training. Again, we do all the training ourselves on site here in Columbia once you pass the skills test. So we're moving as quickly as possible, but it is no doubt a challenge, but the team is doing great work on that. But point noted, and I can certainly include that in next month's report.
Dick?
Thanks.
Yeah, I think Alan really said it. This new format's terrific. It's much easier to digest. I think what Milton used to do is just ask all his direct reports to throw something in, and this is great. And as Alan pointed out, the big concern we've always had is being caught by surprise.
Yeah.
And so giving us a heads up on things that might be coming up is a very useful piece of that report. I have a question for Kristen. I keep hearing this term, commercial corridors, and it really scares me. I've never gotten an explanation as to what it is. When I hear commercial corridor, I think Route 40. And I just want to, can you give us a better definition of what a commercial corridor? I mean, I look at what they're doing at Snowden River Parkway, and it sounds like a commercial corridor. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, and I think that we've talked about this a little bit. Yes, Snowden River is a commercial corridor, and what is happening on Snowden River is a consequence of the existing FDPs and what Newtown permits. And so the county has already said that they don't want another Route 40. So how can we change what's permitted to prevent that from happening?
Okay, good. So our position then is we don't want Route 40. And we
Right.
don't want things like that new Royal Farms that doesn't have any landscaping buffers and that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, that's not a general plan type of topic. That will be a topic more related to zoning, but the general concept of landscaped boulevard, orientation, setback, not so much setbacks, but orientation, those are all things related to the general plan that I'm sure will come up on July 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I will just mention, I will be adding to the tracking form. Joel Horowitz has asked regarding our 2/3 policy. So I will be adding that to our tracking form. So you'll be able to see that at future iterations. And I told Joel I would get back to him with when we can respond to that date. Okay. There are no reports or presentations. Do we have any proposed new topics? Jenny?
Not a new topic, but you asked me last week to get back to you, and I apologize, I didn't, on the, what I want is the study of the CA advisory committees and where I thought that should go, and it would be under strategic priority leadership development, but I'd like to get it on the board tracking thing, so we make sure at some point in the fall, we hear it after the work's been done by staff as to exactly what's the purpose of each one, and, what we've talked about, who nominates them, who appoints, and are they still useful? Or should we create other ones? Should we eliminate some, et cetera? So.
And I will mention that anyone, so the advisory committee Google form, I think everyone filled it out. You can go in and look at the summary results. So I am happy to send that out as well. So you can see how our board responded to what we were expecting or anticipating for advisory committees.
I'd like to see that, yeah.
Sherry?
Yeah, under topics, what Ginny just said about speaker series, would that need to go under new topics?
Yeah, let's add it in.
Yeah.
I think, so what I'd like to say is that we'll include that under our priority item for community engagement. Is that fair? If we track it that way, or?
I just, we have different ways of keeping an eye on it. as
Oh,
opposed to just
so the
wondering.
topic, okay, I got you.
Yeah, if we
Mhm,
put it
okay.
in there,
Yep.
then we'll know that it will come up under
Gotcha.
that area.
I'm still getting this process done.
Yeah.
All right, and I had two things that came up during this meeting. I think we need further definition around our Elmo guidelines. So obviously, I'm not sure how to respond when somebody calls it, so I think we'll have to figure out what we as a board would expect from that scenario. And then two, further discussion about subcommittees and working groups so that we all are aligned on what we think those look like and the best way to work them. Obviously, they can be flexible depending on the group, but I think it's important for us to have a general understanding about what we expect the outcome of those groups to be. So those are two things that I will add. Okay, anything else, new topics? Rolling right along. All right.
Somebody take a picture of that.
So may I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Amber.
All right. We are adjourned at 8:41. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Janet.